My name is Jim Broshears. I'm the treasurer of the Butte County Fire Safe Council and the chair of the Paradise Ridge Fire Safe Council. And I'm here to talk about how you can reduce the risk of wildfire in your home and in your community. So the slides that I'm going to show you right now are going to give you a visual opportunity to understand how you can reduce your risk. The key here to remember is that fire burns with certain specific patterns. And although we've had these devastating fires that have increased our risk, they still burn with the same basic rules. So we're going to talk about how that works and the little things and bigger things that you can do to reduce risk from your home. And the name of this is called radiant heat in the first 5 feet, because those are the two primary factors that will ignite a structure during a wildland fire. Why do homes burn? Well, they burn because embers are blown in and around the home, and they ignite objects that are near the home, and that creates a path for the fire to reach the home. So that's one of the key ways that the fires burn, for instance, in the campfire in 2018. It also is radiant heat. So anything that is an object, could be a shed, a fence, it could be vegetation, that creates enough heat to ignite your home. The home doesn't just catch on fire. It catches on fire because there's a path for the fire to get to your home. Ember ignition was a big factor in 2018 and many fires in the last 5 years. Embers are wind blown and they can travel miles, but they also can be created by the stuff immediately around your home. So in this particular slide, you're seeing a way that fire could burn directly to your home on the left, and then a wood pile that could catch embers and result in the home burning. Certainly, if that wood pile catches on fire on that deck, that home will burn. Embers can also enter the home through various portals, including vents, open windows, windows that break because of the heat created by a fire around them. And you can see that in an ember storm, it's a pretty devastating moment. We're going to see that even more so in just a minute. This is a video taken during the campfire. And I took this video just to show you what it looked like in Paradise. This is at about 2:30 in the afternoon in downtown, the Skyway downtown area. And, there's fire burning all around. And now we're not so much seeing the embers from the big fire, we're seeing embers from the fires that it started, meaning the structures that are burning. So you can see that what happens is that while a home may not have burned in the first pass of the fire, as things continue to burn, they continue to generate embers and radiant heat and continue to burn additional structures. And it could be little things that end up burning your home down. You see the little bark below the siding on the right, and you see an accumulation of leaves on the left. I have a saying that says, where the leaves blow, the embers go. And what that means is that they tend to accumulate in places that are like eddies and corners. You'll find them in the inside corner of a house outside next to the siding. And that amount of leaves you see on the left or bark you see on the right is enough to generate enough heat to burn your home. Of course, vegetation near your home sometimes is deceptive. And what you're seeing here on the left is what that bush looks like on the outside. But on the inside, it's a lot of dead material. We call that dead to live ratio. The inside is going to burn, and it may look green and lush, but in reality, there's more burnable material than there is unburnable material in that vegetation. Being that close to your home, underneath the eave, almost certainly would ignite the home. In this case, you see the windows. They become the most vulnerable spot. The windows break, and then pretty much the game's over, fire enters the home. This is my own home. This is my nemesis. This is the corner near my front door that always catches the leaves, that always seems to accumulate leaves. And if I had left that up that way during the campfire, where everything around my home burned, but my home did not, that could have been enough to ignite my home, that small amount of leaves. So it's important to understand that that's the vector, that's the path that would allow the home to burn. And this shows it on the Humboldt fire in 2008. You can pretty much see that they've got a wick And you'll see how the embers work on this next slide. That wick of presentation, we're going to take a look at this, a little bit of this video here in a second, and I'll describe what's going to happen. A research center developed a simulator for developing embers so that it could expose building materials to embers using large fans and then blowing the embers into, let's say, a typical home. So this is showing a home with a couple different kinds of roofing. It shows the vulnerability. They used a mix of pine bark mulch, the kind of least materials you would find around homes. So you can see that they load up their machine in order to create the embers, normal stuff that we would encounter in any home any day. That would be this, simulating plants and landscaping materials placed around your home. And then they planted, put some plants like a typical home next to the siding, and maybe some mulch, some leaves, and to create this environment. They use 5 ember generators to blow these large fans to create a wind-like effect. And I can tell you, when you see this, this is nothing as intense as a real wildfire. What we saw in the campfire was much more intense in terms of ember generation and wind-blown embers. So this array creates about a 10 to 20 mile an hour shower of embers. And you can see that that's what your home has to face. That's what it has to be able to withstand. And it can if you do things right. It can if you don't have vegetation that's going to easily ignite around the home, or as you can see on the roof, the accumulation of vegetative material ignited and the vinyl gutter melts and falls, and then it becomes exposed to the eave, and then the home burns. So you can see many pathways that are being exposed. Another pathway that's being exposed in this particular video is that as those embers are blowing up there in that peak of that roof, you can see that the vent, it becomes a vulnerable spot, as well as the roofing. So the Class A roofing material is the best type for a wildland fire. We did find out during the campfire that asphalt roofs, which typically do pretty well, did increase your risk over, say, a metal roof or a tile roof. So you can see that what the result was. It was that ember storm. In this case, the untreated shake roof was easily ignited, and even fire occurred on the asphalt roof because of the other accumulations that had been allowed to stay. So let's talk about the first 5 feet and how critical that is, because as you can see from the ember storm, that's where the embers are going to accumulate. That's where they're going to look for something to ignite. And once that's ignited, then your structure becomes much more vulnerable to becoming ignited. This is the same home, looking at it from 2 angles. So they've done this beautiful job on one side. It's a great example on the left of showing, how they've got gravel and rock and concrete. But on the other side of the home, they've got these large shrubs that have a really high dead to live ratio, meaning that a lot of the inside of that green shrub is actually dead material and would easily ignite, create a lot of heat that would almost certainly burn the home. This is another couple of examples. The one on the right is what I call a walk zone. I've created that around my own home where there's a space between the vegetation. Even a small space makes a big difference. And you can see that in this case on the right, they've put a vegetation that's low growing, doesn't have a lot of woody material in it. You see on the left, the people on the left had done about $10,000 worth of mastication work, and yet they had this shrub, this bush, growing on a wood trellis underneath an eave vent. And I told them, all that work you did, and your home burns because of this. And of course, fortunately, they removed that after they were informed about that. But that little thing could be the only one. It was the only thing around that home that was that vulnerable, and that would be enough. So again, leaves collecting, in this case, my least favorite material, which would be junipers, because they're oily and they burn hot. A lot of people like to put them in landscaping around their home, easily ignite. So the leaves ignite, the juniper ignites, the house ignites. This was actually a fire I put out during the campfire. When I was driving around, I saw this small fire. I pulled the material away from the home and cleaned it out as quick as I could. It took about 5 minutes. and that home survived. It likely would have, just from this little bit of wood burning, caught the bushes and debris on fire and then eventually burned the home. So small ignitions can equal big fires. These are again examples of where somebody, look on the top two photos, has done a lot of work. They've masticated, and yet when you go up close to their house, in the front you see shrubs right up against the front door, and you see this is their deck on one side with bark mulch material underneath the deck, underneath the wood deck. So they've done all this work and spent this money, but the embers are going to travel beyond the work they did and ignite the home. Another beautiful job. They've done this beautiful work, mowed it, kept it down, except when you move up closer to the home, you see these tall, oily, easily ignitable plants that again are more dead on the inside. There's more dead material in that plant, even though you can't see it, than there is live, and will burn hot and almost certainly would burn the house down. Another example of good defensible space, but the deck becomes the vulnerability. And as I told this homeowner, the key to their safety is how clean they keep the area under and around their deck. So removing all those things you see that are right along the side of the deck would be key for them to survive. This home, after he cleaned it up and done some mastication and defensible space work, did survive the fire. So here's a kind of depiction of what I'm talking about. You can either have radiant heat that works directly up to the home, or you could have direct flame contact from the vegetation around the home, or you could have a way for the fire to transfer. In this case, it was a wood pile, fences, outbuildings, all ways that the fire can transfer to the home. It's a path or a vector, I call it, to get the fire from the vegetation, the burning vegetation around the home, that you had good defensible space, but you had the fence, and the fence or the outbuilding ignites, and then the home ignites. Radiant heat would be that heat that you saw created in the previous slide from the fence burning. That radiant heat transferred from the fence to the home and jumped space, you might say, because the radiant, like a radiated heater, you know, it goes through space. And then again, it's all about that first 5 feet and then what you have around your home. So you can see a really good example here where they've mowed and done a really good job, but in the front porch is the wood pile. And in that one slide, you see the broom. The broom is a great source. That's where the fire is going to start. The ember's going to hit that broom, those little leaves. That's going to create the heat necessary to burn the wood. And the wood's going to, of course, catch on fire and then cause the home to ignite. Wood piles near homes. This was one that was cleared away to save a home. Nearly cost them a home, but firefighters were able to throw the materials aside and save the home. It certainly would have ignited the home. This is from the campfire. This is an example of radiant heat, and although you can't see this in the picture, about 28 feet to the left is a home that's fully involved. And the radiant heat from that home, about 28 feet away, ignited the eaves, and then eventually this home burned. Without water, there was no way to put it out. But we saw this over and over and over again during the campfire, where a home adjacent. And one of the studies that was done after the campfire showed that if you were more than 30 feet away from adjoining structures, whether it's your own structure like a shed or your neighbor's structure, you had a more than 50% chance of surviving, better than being less than 30 feet away. So distance matters. That's where radiant heat does its work, is in distance, in space. Construction features, places where embers can enter a home or radiant heat can enter a home. So like vents are areas of concern, and those can be changed into a fire-resistant vent. Small places where wood is exposed directly to where embers would land. So concrete foundations, for instance, best case scenario is that you've got 6 inches of space from the bottom of your foundation to the first burnable material. so embers could burn but not ignite the material. Sometimes, what it's looking for is a crack, a space, any vulnerability to the wood. No screen on this vent, embers blow in, accumulate, and burn the home. Even tile roofs, which are a really good fire-resistant roof, have some vulnerabilities that have to be dealt with. You can see that on the right, there's a bird's nest. They actually call it bird stopping. And the tunnels you see on the left are actually open to the attic. So unless those are stopped or blocked, embers can directly enter your attic. So you can see that there's a lot of ways that fire can enter, but most of them, the vast majority of them, can be mitigated, can be dealt with, and you can make your home a lot less vulnerable to fire. In my estimation, looking at the studies that were done after the campfire, by doing all the activities that we talked about and having a hardened home, which means you've done some things like your roof is not vulnerable, maybe change the vents, you could increase your, reduce your risk by up to 75%, which is pretty good when you think about that in terms of an almost 90% loss during the campfire. So ultimately, choices and consequences. This video shows people who had not chosen to do even the little things. A small fire that got no more than a few acres within minutes had a pathway to go up a hill, go through the vegetation up to the wood deck, ignite the home, and then the home ignited the home next door. And in the rest of the video, which I'm not going to show you the whole video, eventually 5 homes burned. The first one from the direct path of fire going up underneath the deck, direct flame contact, and then the rest of them all burned from radiant heat from the fire next door to them because they're close together. And you can see we talked about that 30 feet from the study, that clearly these homes are much closer than 30 feet together. So, what you do affects your neighbor, and what your neighbor does affects you. In the end, I'm going to give you the firefighter's perspective. I spent a career starting 50 years ago as a firefighter, and how we look at your property and how we look at saving your home. Number one, plants and homes are fuel. They burn. All plants burn. It just matters how much heat it takes to burn them or how much heat they give off. Homes that don't have defensible space and a place to safely park an engine are unsafe to defend, meaning firefighters are not going to be able to stay there and put themselves at great risk to defend your home. Give us a place to go. And last but not least, we prefer, when we're given choices and we can't fight all the battles, to pick winning battles. We're going to pick the places that have done the work to make it safer for wildfire. So I hope that these tips that I gave you today will help you make your home safer from wildland fire. And I hope that you will take these activities to heart and make a difference in not only your home, but your neighbor's home and your community. Thank you.